when I became a sales agent, however, my eyes were sort of open because I started realizing that some properties would sell really well in all market conditions and others wouldn't. And I'm thinking, start to tease that out. What's the difference? You know, as a listing agent, when you go to do an appraisal on a property, you turn up at the front of the property, you look out and you either your heart sings or your heart falls because you think, oh, it's going to be a dog to sell, or, oh, my God, I hope I get this listing because this one's a cracker, you know? And so you start to learn, and I learned it by osmosis. It wasn't so a deliberate way of looking at property, but you start to learn, oh, some properties are better than others. You know, if they get competition in a slow market, then they're more likely to get a higher price because competition puts prices up. So my eyes started, I guess, my brain started clicking into gear, if you like, and I started sort of recognizing certain patterns. At the same time, I was earning good money, and so then I invested in a house, like a second property. At this point, it was my first proper investment that I bought as an investment. And I wanted to develop that. I was looking for a property that I could, and look, a couple of fallacies here as well. One was I wanted to time the market, right? As a sales agent, I knew that the seasonality, I was selling in Sydney, there's seasonality. So I knew that the market would typically dip in spring when there's more stock comes on the market, clearance rates fall, and there's sort of some pressure on prices, downward pressure on prices. So I put this deadline on myself to buy an investment property within this time frame because I felt that I was going to get the best bargain. What that meant was that I ended up buying like a B grade property. And maybe I could have waited until the next year and bought an A grade property. Who knows? But I didn't even give myself that opportunity. So once again, this is something that I learned over many years. After looking back on that, it didn't perform as well as potentially it could have if I bought a different asset. I also bought to renovate, but I didn't get good guidance. I didn't get advice from an architect because, you know, I had this idea that I would renovate in stages. I'd do downstairs and then later on I'd do an upstairs extension. I did buy this property. It had a slightly narrow block of land, which meant that actually I couldn't do a two-stage reno. I had to do it all in one hit, which I subsequently did at one point. But, you know, all I'm saying, I guess, my awareness of investing and the investment decisions that can ultimately impact how well you do in an investment, all this stuff was sort of slowly revealed to me through my own trial and error, and also through the experience of being a sales agent and seeing, you know, which sort of properties performed well and which ones didn't. It honestly wasn't until I became a buyer's agent that I start to really explore and really try to pull apart, how do you benchmark property performance? What's more important, yield versus capital growth? How do you measure that? And how do you assess what's a really good investment or not? So all of that sort of started in a much more, I guess, academic sort of way after becoming a buyer's agent. And even then, it probably was a few years into that. And then since probably in the last 5 years, but maybe a little bit before then, I started really looking at other types of investments because property has got a lot of positives, but there's a lot of negatives about investing in property. But early on in life, when you're putting all your resources into the property basket, you don't have a lot left over to invest in other things, you know, outside property. So that's something that I've been able to do as an older investor, if you like. When I've built up a lot of equity in property, I've had the flexibility to then think, well, rather than squirrel away and try and buy another property, that quantity strategy where a lot of people are just trying to get quantity of properties, I'm satisfied with a handful of really good properties. And my focus is, you know, when I get available cash flow to invest, and I like to invest regularly as well, then I invest smaller numbers in different asset classes. So that's a long-winded explanation for where I am on the investment